Welcome back, everybody, to another awesome podcast with Daniel Lee. Daniel is one of my, again, close friends, and him and I actually started Koridor back in the day, version 1.0, together. So today we're going to be talking about what founders can expect from hiring and working with co-founder developers, such as Daniel. A brilliant mind like his. It was a very fun challenge between you and I.
Yeah.
Working together, and so we're going to talk about all the do's, don'ts, what he loved about me, what he hated about me. Is a forum for you to say whatever you want. So no repercussions here, and hopefully you guys take some things away from when you are looking for especially a co-founder that's in the tech space, to really know what you're looking for, because I think that's the number one issue, right? Is that when co-founders are looking for a development, they just assume you're all the same.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
So, so let's go from the start. So how was your experience? Because that was your first startup, right? Koridor 1.0 was your first startup.
Yeah. It was my first startup. Like before that, I was working at like an enterprise company.
What was the
Uh,
company called again? It was a Geo
yeah, it's called Esri.
Esri, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I was doing that. I was kind of getting bored and stuff, and then you.
By the way, he says he was getting bored to the point where I even asked him, I was like, what are the chances that Esri?
Esri. Yeah.
Esri would go out of business. He said, unless the world freezes over, it's impossible. So he truly left a very secure job to come do this with me.
Yeah.
So sorry, continue.
So like I was getting bored, and yeah, you contacted me about a startup idea, and it sounded cool, so I kind of decided to, yeah, let's give it a go.
The stars aligned.
Pretty much.
So what's I mean, look, I mean, you and I were both first time like startup world, like we kind of threw ourselves at this whole situation. So if you're talking at a developer who's starting a startup for the first time, what's the number one advice you would give that developer? Not the founder, the developer himself.
Uh, just I guess you should be very open to just doing everything.
Yeah.
For sure. Especially if you're coming from like an enterprise position, where like you're kind of pigeonholed into very specific areas of the development team and stuff. So that's one area that I would say you have to kind of get used to it. The other one that I would say you have to get used to would be there is no help guide. Yeah. Everything like
There was a lot of 4 a.m. nights, especially
yeah.
for you.
Yeah, there's no help guides. Like you are the help guide. Google's your help guide. You're not gonna have
Documentation, I've learned.
yeah
See?
document. No, yeah, like definitely read your documentation. But like there's not gonna be anybody in particular like that you can go to.
And most of the times you're solving a niche situation, right?
Yeah,
You're solving something that hopefully someone else hasn't solved yet. And so you really are in the dark.
yeah. So I mean I think that's more from a product perspective, not so
Fair.
much from a tech perspective. The thing is like a lot of devs they don't at least from not a lot. I shouldn't say a lot. At least from my experience, like I didn't get a previously I didn't get a lot of chance to work in like a breadth of different technologies.
Yeah.
Whereas like when I decided to do this, I went from just like doing like C++, embedded or like, SDK development over into like just jump straight into like Node.js, like
Completely
doing
different.
like managing my own like really crappy little infrastructure on
Yeah.
AWS, all the way to like learning the various different actually learning about like how the particular industry you're working on as well, right? Like 'cause I had no
Yeah,
idea anything of like
that's right.
Corridor 1.0 was like a ERP.
Yeah.
Like the idea was to make an ERP. I had no idea what an ERP was. I didn't know what it even stood for.
And I think that's the number one thing when partnering up with a dev, even a team. Let's say even
Yeah.
if you partner up with a company, um, I mean, we get this a lot where our clients come to us and they're just like, "Hey, we've worked with the dev team. They had no idea what we were doing." And it's truly just like understanding. Like dev team needs to understand the business case. Like it needs to be portrayed. It needs to be given to them in a way where they understand what it is
Yeah.
and how it affects the product, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So like one of the challenges I would say hurdles would have been like, um, I had like, I mean, I obviously like if you tell me how to manage like a customer management system,
Yeah.
I have a certain
Base
like
understanding.
base understanding or certain assumptions about like how certain stuff works. But like that may be true maybe at like the highest of levels,
Yeah.
but like if you're now targeting specific industries, some of those assumptions other kind of don't apply
Yeah.
or they go out the window. And so like you should never try to make assumptions. You should try to probably like dig as deep as you can to the product person to understand
And
like,
it's
how
kind
it
of
works.
I remember I remember one day when so Corridor 1.0 was essentially a full ERP system, like Daniel mentioned, and we had an inventory system built in.
Yeah.
And I remember one day I was testing the system, and we were pretty much on like the ninth inning, like we were pretty
Yeah.
much almost done. And all of a sudden, I'm like, Daniel, how do I do this? And Daniel was like, what is this? And it was this big kerfuffle because I made the assumption
Yeah.
that you knew that and you didn't even know to ask.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge is just like not understanding fully. I mean, you understand tech, you understand what you're doing, you understand code, language, but understanding the business case is a massive aspect.
Yeah, that's definitely like the one of the bigger challenges. Like, yeah, there's like you're gonna have like zero support system, whatever. Like if you're a smart guy, like you can figure it out eventually. Most technical solutions have some form of an answer, uh, but the product space is a space that like I don't know a lot about. That's not my forte. I don't live and breathe like the ERP world. I've never try to manage a plumbing
You've never even
business.
used it, right?
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
never even used it. I'm not a plumber, so I've never tried to use like whatever it is that's out on the
So
market.
now you're at Neo.
Yeah.
So Neo is a Canada-specific Western Canada company, credit card company. Now you're in the infrastructure space only, so you're in ISO.
Yeah.
So what is it like being? Because technically Neo, I mean, you and I have this conversation a lot. I don't think Neo's a startup by the definition of how I understand startups to be, but um, but for you, how was it going from like a true startup, like literally roll up your sleeves, you're a co-founder, like it's only three or four of you, to being in a larger startup world
Um,
where it's like 50 of you and you're kind of put into a more of a team structured place?
yeah. Before I say anything about Neo, I just gotta say, I think I have to say, like all the opinions are from me, has no bearing on to the company Neo.
I would assume so.
Yeah, exactly. I think I just have to say it. Yeah, all opinions are of me, and it's not of Neo. So in my case, like, so after kind of we left Corridor and then and then I joined Neo. Um, yeah, I mean, like there was like it wasn't like the largest of development teams. It was like maybe
I think it was 50 of you.
in
I think it was 90 in
total.
total and then 50 devs.
No, turns out it was actually 50 in total,
Oh, okay.
and then the rest were it was yeah. Um, but yeah, like when I joined, there was only one other person doing infrastructure at the time. So it was still like roll up the sleeve to like get the infrastructure going, but the focus was on managing the
Infrastructure.
infrastructure, whereas like there were select few devs that were working on the other aspects. So it was nice in the sense that like I could try to make uh like the infrastructure really good.
And you can focus on it.
And I
You
could
didn't
focus
have
on
to
it.
focus
Yeah.
on 10 different things at once.
Yeah.
Because even with Corridor 1.0, and I always refer to Corridor 1.0, but anyways, um, so Corridor 1.0, we had a lot of challenges with the front end devs,
Yeah.
right? Because we had front end developers, and again, it was those assumptions we made, like any normal developer would know pagination is a thing,
Yeah.
right? And here we are. All of a sudden, our pages were taking 20 minutes to load because they were loading everything all at
Yeah.
once, right?
Yeah. 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 So like when I joined, I had like had like a dev that was doing mobile development, had like a dev or two doing front end development, or I guess full stack, sorry. And then there was two of us kind of doing the infrastructure. Whereas within Corridor, yeah, I like try to manage all of it. Like my focus could only extend so far
Yeah.
unless I had a bigger dev team. So like certain areas like I made assumptions that they would know and then kind of left it. Now I know never to do that.
Full
Yeah.
disclosure, Daniel dislikes contractors significantly, and I think Corridor had a big part of that. So, what's the so we talk to a lot of non-technical founders. I mean, when we talk to them, they have an idea. Here's what I'm thinking of building, and they they try to look for a partner, but what we find is that they're not looking for a partner so much so they're just looking for someone who can code. So if you were to give them advice when they're searching for a developer
Mm.
or a co-founder that's a developer, what would you suggest to them when they're looking?
Um, so I think you can like there's a few things that you should definitely look for. Like one of them is their ability to adapt to different situations for sure.
Yeah,
Because like
being able to wear multiple hats.
with being able to wear multiple hats, like they shouldn't be afraid to like they may have their likings, but they should be able to jump between different things, be able to build everything out as needed by themselves if that's like the only solution, if there's no money to hire an extra dev or something.
Yeah.
So that's important. The other one maybe to look for um is just just someone with a lot of with a fairly thick skin.
That's true.
Yeah, because like, like us like and I think this actually kinda goes for anybody at the very early stages of
100%.
a startup, like
You have to be flexible. You have to be thick skinned. Yeah.
yeah,
It's,
like
it's go you go through a lot.
yeah,
You go through shit.
you essentially like some of the high points are pretty good,
Yeah.
fantastic. The low points can be like, "Oh,
And
boy," like, they could
they
be
drag.
and they can drag for a
Yeah.
long time, so, like, you have to have someone who's able to kinda, like, um think till not maybe like till the bitter end, be able
Yeah,
to
yeah.
stick by and hopefully like
Um,
turn the ship around.
because I remember there were some days where I would wake up and like literally want to puke. Like that's the level of like pressure and stress and one of the biggest things with founders too is like they go raise a bunch of money, right? And most of the time the money is not like angel investor A, it's usually you and me. I'm putting my life savings into it. I'm putting in my parents' life savings into it. Like it's a lot of money that's like very directly yours.
Yeah,
And it's hard to convince an investor to invest in your startup if you haven't put money into it yourself.
yeah,
So really the pressure is there. And
yeah,
they do that on purpose. They're not stupid. Like they purposely ask you how much have you put into it because it's like, okay, then I know you'll have grit,
yeah,
right? So, um, so yeah, I mean, yeah, when you're looking 100%, I'm with you. Thick skin is a major one. I never thought of that actually, like the thick skin for sure.
yeah.
What did you like about being like what's different between Neo and Corridor? Like what was different about each one? Because Neo, again, you're kind of put into a more because you guys' CTO is more of a recruiter than he is
Oh no,
direct and
he's actually fairly technically proficient. It's just that like
technically proficient, but
now that uh like
like
now that
he's building the map of where Neo's going with tech,
uh
with technology, right?
that I am not
Oh,
sure.
yes. But he's not
Like
sitting there coding anymore.
no, he's
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely not involved day to day in the coding aspect. He's yeah, definitely looking at the long term stuff.
I always call that Series A. Whenever we talk to founders or whatever, we literally say, look, you want your developer who can code because that's what he's going to do primarily at the startup stage. At Series A, they get into the more okay higher vision of what the product is going to look like on the tech side, the tech stack, cleaning up, because when you're doing startup, nothing's pretty.
Yeah.
You spend a little more time making it pretty, but the average Joe doesn't make it pretty.
Uh,
It's like, how fast can you launch, right?
yeah.
Um, and then they're more around recruiters because now you need a huge influx of developers, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that's essentially like, yeah, that's pretty much, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So what did you like? What do you like about Neo? Or sorry, what did you like about Neo as a startup, like a larger startup, versus Corridor as a smaller startup?
Like, so like in my experience with like Corridor, like I got to obviously be exposed to a lot of different tech,
Mhm.
get to do my own thing, and then also like and also get this like a lot of exposure on like the a lot more in depth exposure to the business side,
Mhm.
and so that's
Now you definitely know what an ERP is.
yeah. Yeah. Whereas with like, like with like when at least when I joined, um, there were like a lot, it's like some of the product was like, kind of being built out already.
Yeah.
I didn't obviously, and because like there were separate, business side team, I didn't get as much exposure. I didn't get pretty much any exposure, I guess, to the business side
Right.
versus just, just hearing about it from talking to other people, the
That's
company.
that. This is Neo.
This is
Yeah.
yeah, this
The
would
larger
be
one.
yeah, so at least that was my experience with it. I don't know what others
But you got
experience,
to
but
focus.
I got to
That's the
focus. Yeah.
biggest difference, I think, is the
Yeah.
fact that when you come in a smaller startup, you really are that you got to be able to do it everything.
Yeah.
And you and I interviewed how many full stack developers
Yeah.
who called themselves full stack, but realistically, they were very much like either a back end or front end.
Yeah.
They're not full. They may understand it, they may be able to do it, but no one likes to do both.
Yeah. And I would say that's the same case with me. I'm not a
Well,
big
yeah,
yeah,
you'll
I'm not
always
a
complain about
yeah,
front
I'm not like
end.
I'll do it if needed, but like I would much rather just like stick to the back end side.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And so, how was it being a manager? Because we did have a bunch of devs under our belt.
Yeah.
So how did you manage them? How did you find managing them? What would you give in terms of advice to the non-technical? So
Yeah.
essentially me, if I'm ever doing this, what would you say to me?
Yeah. In the future, what I think would have done is I wouldn't have hired any contractors. Instead, I would have probably pooled that money into just hiring, like the best devs that I could, but like a much fewer number of them, obviously.
Yeah,
Like, because I think we at one point had like 3 or 4 contractors helping us out or
yeah. We
something.
had 3 contractors
Yeah.
and we had an internal team of two.
2?
It
Like,
was you and him.
oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
forget about
Yeah,
him.
no, no, sorry. I
So
thought you weren't. I thought
just
you
so
weren't
our
counting.
audience
Yeah,
knows, we also had another developer who was with us every single day,
yeah,
and his name is Harem, and he's actually with Daniel at Neo right now. So,
yeah.
fun fact.
Um, So yeah, I wouldn't yeah, so I would have like obviously like I would have hired like someone who's really good at like some form of mobile development, someone really good for front end if that was the kind of the goal that we were doing
Oh my god,
obviously.
I forgot about the contractor for the mobile.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
god.
and
Okay,
then
that's a fun story. We
I
got to tell it again. This will tell you why Daniel hates the contractor so much. So what happened was we actually went and sourced because we didn't have capacity, and so we actually sourced our app development with someone else, and I won't go into the details, but let's just say it was an epic fail. We had hired a company. Um, and they worked out of Eastern Europe. So, that's our budget was tight. I mean, that's the reality of
yeah,
it. And they got us in with a contract price, but then completely changed that contract price. To be honest with you, that's the one of the reasons why 2.0 for me, quarter 2.0 is hits home, is because of the fact that we got taken advantage in that way, whereas I refuse to do that here. And That's a big part of like everybody that we bring on is like, we don't do that. Like it's fixed pricing and timeline because that messes with you,
Yeah.
right? It screwed us up
Yeah.
significantly.
Yeah.
Our app
Essentially,
was essentially useless.
yeah. Yeah. So essentially, like I would have done that. So, like hire people that I could actually trust to handle that side
So
versus,
that being said, though, remember we were trying to hire.
yeah.
You were quite picky.
Yeah, exactly.
So
But I think you have to be.
is it easy to find good developers today? Because well, I mean,
If
like
you're
during
willing.
Corridor, I can honestly tell you, you hated 99% of the people who applied.
Yeah.
Is it gotten better or is it getting worse? Because now you have more exposure at Neo.
It's still really hard to find really good devs, but I think what I would have done differently to find them would I'd have probably gone to a lot more like meetups, like gone to a lot more networking events to like more startup focused to see.
Interesting.
Because like a lot of the time, like at least I think not a lot of the time. I think some of them will show up to those looking for like maybe a challenge or something, and maybe you can talk them up and like and I guess like it's either like they're willing to look for a large salary, but hopefully, like,
And it's interesting you say that because we just had Wish on our podcast. Um, Wish is our director of AI, but he literally did that. When he finished school in computer science, he was going to all the meetups and networking events
yeah,
to look for a job. You're totally right on that.
yeah. So I would have done that probably versus like trying to source them from like LinkedIn or something. That's, sometimes those work out, but like uh, uh it's just a lot less.
So what are you looking for now in a dev? Like, are you like I famously around this office tell every developer that we hire, I'm like, I don't need a developer to know how to code language. I need a developer who can problem solve. That's my big
Well,
thing.
it depends on the level.
Fair.
If like so like if for like if I were to redo Corridor 1.0, the level of people that I need would have to have both problem solving and really good coding skills because like you can't like it's
You
great
can,
that yeah it's great that you can problem solve, but like if you haven't coded in like 15 years,
those
like
are unicorns though. Those are very hard to find. Like good coders and good problem solvers. I remember we interviewed a master student and you were so excited to meet her. And she was probably worse than our average Joe from university.
yeah, I mean I don't know. At a certain yeah, it's hard, but like
I think that was the first interview that Daniel and I kind of like we did it and we like looked at each other and we were like, you know what, we're cutting this interview short. We did. We
yeah,
cut it short because it was just like she was giving up on all the problems, all the problem questions. She couldn't understand your code questions.
yeah. Yeah. So I wouldn't yeah, so that's what I would do. I mean I would
The
probably
point is,
work quite a bit.
education, in my opinion, is not everything.
I mean it helps.
It helps.
It helps. I mean yeah,
I
it
have
helps.
noticed that like the guys who come out of like computer science degrees versus like the boot camps,
Yeah.
I noticed the difference in a understanding
Yeah.
development. I feel like the boot camp people, they're more like brute force programming, whereas the computer science people are more theoretically, um, they try to understand, problem solve around it, then execute.
Um
That's from my experience.
yeah.
I don't know if it's always the same, but I'm sure there's a
Yeah.
mixed variety of each. But
I don't know if I could quantify that, but like I would say like usually from what I've seen, like people coming out of boot camps are they're very focused on just like coding.
yeah,
They don't have a very big understanding of the actual like
fundamentals.
fundamentals, which is important. Helps you kind of navigate through like a lot of different languages and stuff. But yeah, I can't remember where I was going with this, where we're going with this now.
With the programming.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So like at a senior, like so, like yeah. So at a very early stage, they need to have both, and I need to be able to trust them to handle it. And then and at now like now depends on the level. Like if you're an intermediate or junior, I expect you to have maybe not a junior so much, but at least intermediate. I expect you to be
Intermediate.
able to, code whatever we need. Maybe not whatever we need, but like whatever language you're familiar with.
Yeah.
I expect you to do that pretty well. Even at a senior level, I would actually expect you to be able to do it still pretty well, but like definitely be a lot more independent.
There's a lot of jokes. So Daniel is not actually on social media, so I'll just kind of speak to it. But on TikTok and Instagram, you'll see it all the time with like TikTokers like kind of being like when you try to sit there and it's like trying to figure out one problem as to why your code isn't running, and all they do is delete the test
Oh,
so that it passes.
yeah,
Like
no.
there's and that happens a lot. Like we don't know. Like there's no way to really. I'm sure that's a joke, but I'm sure people have done it.
I hope you got caught in PR or like pull requests, but
You
like
would hope,
should have. Yeah.
but that's the best. That's the one thing that I always tell people is like code isn't perfect. It's not like hardware. Like you
Even
need
hardware is not perfect.
yeah, even hardware. But I can build this, right? I can build this, put software in it, and it'll almost like pretty much a 96% rate will work 100% of the time as long as you own it, right?
Okay.
Whereas like with websites and like web apps, it gets complicated fast and it's constant upgrading, constant management.
Um, to a degree. Depends. Like if your traffic level is pretty, pretty steady, whatever.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's you're fine.
Yeah.
But as you're
Yeah, as
growing,
you're growing, then you'll have different scaling.
well, and as like software's updates, because you're so reliant on like OS, right? You're so reliant on web, Chrome, for example. If Chrome sends a push an update, it might have to update your application. So what I always tell our founders is like, software is not so much hardware where you can build it, develop it, and then ship it, and you'll be fine.
Mhm.
It's more like you build it, you ship it, and then you manage it, right? Whereas hardware, it's more like hardware management. Like if there's like a defect, you bring it back, you fix it, cycle it, whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas with software, it's live. like
Yeah.
like they're using it. Like if it breaks, like you have to push an update in the next couple of days.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Ideally, it doesn't come to that, but yes, pretty much. Yeah.
And so that's what I always say is like it is very important to have a solid dev team backing you.
Yeah.
I think it's the number one. And a lot of startups don't think of that.
Um, I don't I actually wouldn't know the answer to that question. I hope they cared enough that they hired like a technical co-founder that like actually understands what they're doing. But I don't know what.
Hopefully they watched this podcast and learned a few things. Maybe they did, right?
Maybe.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like it's tough to find a good developer that can do because again, you're kind of talking about a unicorn, right? You're talking about someone who has to be able to problem solve and be a good coder. And typically those guys are rare breed.
They're rare, but you can find them as long as you're able to compensate them
Entice
for
them.
it. Yeah.
Well, and that's the next thing, right?
Yeah.
Compensation.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts about when co-founder or founders that don't have a technical background, they need to bring on a technical founder? What is a fair compensation to them? Like, how do you see as a fair compensation? Depends on the vision, I know.
Not even depends on the vision. It's just like how far are you along like the
Let's say
business journey?
Korner 1.0, so nothing.
So
Like you
nothing.
just started.
Even if it's just started, like I guess depends. Like how far are you along like I guess like doing your financial modeling, all of that. Is the
Yeah,
idea?
you do really have
Yeah.
to sell them on the vision
Yeah, like
because you can only compensate, like even if you find a good co-founder, like an actual technical founder,
mhm.
like realistically, they're already getting paid 100 to 120 minimum, depending on the region,
Okay.
right? Like if they're working, like they're making that.
Yeah, I would say higher, but okay.
Well, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I was being conservative. So yeah, like in San Francisco, they're making 250.
No, higher.
It's just worse. Okay, so
Yeah.
the point is
Yeah.
though, like you basically have to sell them on the vision because you have to give them shares.
Yeah.
Because there's no way you can afford 200, 300K
Yeah.
on salary for one person.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, depends. Like if you are offering them salary, then obviously I don't know what the percentage thing is like depends on I guess each individual team. But like if there's no salary, then I yeah, then like you'd have to offer them quite a bit of options
Equity.
or equity or something in order to
I don't
entice
even
them.
know if you can get away with options.
No, I don't. No, I wouldn't do it. I don't do it for not with founders.
Yeah.
Yeah, not especially not even with no salary. Not if you're a founder. I would
Yeah.
like an option I would give to employees
Yeah.
as like it's an incentive to stay over whatever vesting period is set for the company.
Yeah.
But for like a founder, no,
You'd
it'd
have to
be
get
straight
equity.
equity. It'd
Yeah.
be like here's
Again, you're getting into a room and you're
Yeah.
literally rolling up your sleeves and working alongside with them.
yeah. So
Right.
it would have to be a decent
Okay, so we'll have some fun with this part. What did you like about me and what did you dislike about me in terms of as a non-technical founder that was working with you? Not
Mm,
personal. Don't get personal.
everything.
Everything. I
Everything.
hated everything.
Everything. Let's see. Should I start with the bad or the good?
Whatever you want to start with.
I'll start with the bad then.
Okay.
Start on end on a good note.
Okay, and on a good note. I like that.
I guess like in terms of what I disliked the most was like I think we've already talked about this was like you'd have the tendency to like assume that I would know
Yes.
like the business scenarios and like the logic and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I would find out
Trust me, that has changed.
yeah, I would find out a lot later, like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay, that's definitely
Uh,
not how it should have worked.
yeah.
And then we'd have to like redo it. So
In our mini playbook, we actually teach assumptions
oh,
strictly
okay.
because of you and me.
Yeah, I think honestly, I think that was like the biggest one because like
Because there was a bunch of times where I was like, "Where's this?" All again, making the assumption that you would know.
yeah,
That happened a lot. You're right,
yeah, like
and I think that happens a lot with a lot of founders.
exactly.
A lot of times.
So like yeah, so that was maybe like one of the bad part. Can I think of anything else?
Nope, I'm perfect. Nothing else.
And you know what? I'm sure there are other like smaller things, but they're smaller things. Like
Yeah.
it's not like no one's perfect, but like it's not. But they're not such a big like thing
It wasn't
that made it memorable.
devastating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that made it like I remember this, and I
Yeah,
gotta
yeah.
say it. Like the thing
The
that
assumptions.
yeah, the big thing I remember was just the assumption because there were just so many times when I was like, oh, I wish you had told me
And
this.
to be honest with
yeah.
you, I wasn't very good at making like user flows. Like
Mm.
I was just new at developing product too, and so I didn't have like I was pretty new at developing product
Yeah.
as well,
Yeah.
and so I didn't even know I was making assumptions. That was the problem too, right? We were both in the dark with
Yeah.
that, and so yeah, I agree with that. Okay, and then what's a good?
Uh, the good was, I mean,
And it doesn't have to be about me. It could be just about Cordo, but just what was the good?
um, I think the best part was just the level of like transparency that I got into the business and stuff. Like I understood like I wasn't like I know a bit of finances, but I didn't know that much, and I actually learned a thing or two about like cash flow, like how to manage on all that other businessy side of things,
Yeah.
and like I actually knew like in depth what the numbers were like. Um, and yeah,
And I think that's a huge part as keeping a co-founder or even employees kind of on the same page.
yeah,
And I do this with the new Koridor as well. Like I'm very transparent because in my opinion, secrecy doesn't really help, right? Because when everybody is on the same page, everybody knows the same information, we all drive to the same location.
yeah. I mean, assuming everybody understands the vision
Correct.
and like and
Well,
also yeah.
remember our training, like day
Yeah.
1, 2, and 3, I was culture and vision.
Yeah. Yeah. So everybody just needs to be on the same page and then also have the understanding that like it's you're starting something new and that thing's it's gonna be a roller coaster. So like I'll tell you bad news because like you should probably know. But like but you should have expect but like but like you should kind of expect that like nothing's gonna go smooth sailing.
Yeah.
There's no.
I remember one of our key developers quit, and I remember that day you came into the actually that night. I saw you that night and the next day, and you were just like it was a different Daniel. And like I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what it was, but you told me the next day.
Oh.
Actually, Harem, I think it was, well, I just said his name, but that's okay. But Harem was the one that brought it up. And then I immediately knew that's why you've been in deep thought is how I call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, roller coaster is definitely a thing,
Yeah.
especially at a startup. I think the highs is like you start something, it's super exciting. We're gonna make it. We're gonna be a billionaire, and then you get to reality real fast,
Yeah.
and then it's like no one wants us. We're
Yeah.
useless. Then you come up because you get your like first interest in customer.
Yeah.
Then you're like, I can be a billionaire. And then you come back down to earth because you realize that was just lucky.
Yeah.
And you don't know how to replicate that. And it just becomes this weird roller coaster of like up and downs.
Yeah. So it's just expected. And so like being transparent, I think, is really good.
But the payoff is good if it goes through.
Yeah. I mean, it's
That's the
gambling.
key. It's a gamble.
It's a calculated gamble.
It's a calculated shit.
Yeah.
You want to increase your probability as much as you can.
Exactly. It's a calculated.
All right, Daniel, thank you so much for being here with us today. And for everybody watching, thank you so much for listening. Hopefully, Daniel's opinions and thoughts kind of give you a new perspective about how to approach developers and how to even think about bringing on a co-founder for your business because it is a major part of the whole business as a whole, as a concept. You know, at the end of the day, you can sit there and say, okay, I have a really good idea, but if you don't have the proper right-hand man like Daniel, it becomes very challenging to execute that idea. So hopefully you guys got anything. If you have any questions, comments, please let us know down below. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on our next podcast. Have a good one. Thanks, Daniel.